walking much in these heels anyway. Hello everyone. So I had a presentation prepared to give some photos, so you're just going to really have to use your imagination tonight when I talk about these things. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor to be amongst so many people who just care so much about changing the world and about making their communities better. And all of you have a heart for this change. And it's unlike any other convention that I've been to, and probably a lot of you as well, but just being surrounded by this family, that you all have dreams, you all have aspirations to change some part of the world, to change one life, maybe a couple lives. So before I get started, I want you all to sit back real quick and just think about a dream that you have. Think about that one thing that you really want. It might be a new job that you want. It might be something you want to start. Maybe a place you want to live. Just a really far-fetched dream that you've always had in the back of your mind, but it's never really taken any form. So think about that dream as what it is, a dream. And now try and shift your mindset and think about that dream as something that will happen. Think about it as an expectation. In a few years, maybe a few months, maybe 10 years, 20 years, that's going to happen to you. Think of it that way. And notice that it kind of shifts your mindset a little bit. It feels a little more attainable, more real, less overwhelming. So when I got started with Dreamcatchers, it was a dream. It wasn't really something that I had dreamed up throughout my life. I mean, I was only 15. It wasn't something I thought would become what it is today. But it started with the smallest things. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. How we can kind of transform your dreams into something that actually happens. So there's that cheesy quote, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I've always thought that's so silly because I dream, that I'm swimming underwater and that I can fly. And I don't seem to be doing those things, so. But the underlying principle is there, that if you can picture this world for yourself, it might actually be possible in some way. So there's this quote that I want to read to you really quickly, and this is something that I've kept in mind throughout my life in a lot of instances where I felt a little scared or scared of the risk or, not really wanting to do something. And I'm sure some of you have heard this before. Sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. Just literally 20 seconds of just embarrassing bravery. And I promise you something great will come of it. And that was from Benjamin Mee in We Bought a Zoo, if you've seen that movie. But this is a quote that really applied to my life. So I was interning at the Katie Couric show in New York City a few years back in college. And I was just doing office work, just working with the staff, nothing super exciting. I really am interested in film and TV, so I kind of wanted to be on set, but that wasn't really where my intern position was. But I had the credentials, so occasionally I would go to the bathroom and I would head down to set and just casually sneak in like I knew what I was doing. Definitely wasn't supposed to be there, but I would just walk in and be like, well, I'm gonna see how this set runs. I'm gonna maybe meet Katie Couric, maybe run into her, maybe meet someone on the show. And that day that I went down there, they were taping one of her shows, her talk shows she used to do. And there was this guy on the show as a guest on the show, and he was a guy I really admired. I knew who he was, and I really looked up to the work he did. We shared a lot of the same passions, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's on the show today. I'm standing right here. And I'm back there, I'm like chilling by the green room, trying to make myself look like I'm doing something. And I'm like, well, too bad, Caitlin, like, he's just gonna leave, after his show. And he starts walking off the set, and he's walking towards where I'm standing. And I'm like, oh God, what do I do? This is my chance, But immediately my brain was like, no, you're not prepared. You don't know what to say. You didn't think about this moment. You would just embarrass yourself. So I'm like, you're right, brain. We're not gonna say anything. We'll just smile and wave. And then I'm like, okay, Caitlin, remember this quote, this 20 seconds of bravery. Come on, you can do this. And before I knew it, before my brain could yell at me anymore, my feet were walking, and I went up to the guy, and I go, hi. I think we have a lot in common, and we share common passion, and I'd really like to meet you. Or something like that, because I completely blacked out in the moment. I don't really remember it. And regardless, it was not the best prepared speech that I could have said to this guy who I really looked up to. And he gives me a hug. He's like, oh, I'm so glad you came up to me. I would love to talk to you. Here's my card. Shoot me an email. Let's talk. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I can do this. So the next day I emailed him. Long story short, the next summer I'm interning at his company in LA. And he is ultimately the reason that I ended up moving to LA, which is where I live now, and started my career in this whole film and TV business. So those 20 seconds, or in that case, probably a little longer, really changed the course of my life. And if I hadn't, mustered up the courage to walk up to him, I would have probably never ended up in LA. So it's pretty amazing what that could do. Now, lately I've been watching a lot of videos on this thing called the 5-second rule. Have you guys heard of this? Anyone? And I'm not talking about the one where you drop your food on the floor, because that's gross, you guys, if you do that. I'm just kidding, I do it all the time. But the 5-second rule is kind of shortening this 20 seconds of insane courage and bravery into 5 seconds. And the reason that someone genius came up with this is because of our tendency for our brains to hesitate. And that is completely in the programming of our brains. And it's something that we deal with every single day. They are programmed to stop us from doing something that might be harmful to us, that might, put us in a risky situation. So it always hesitates for us. And that's great in some instances, but in a lot of cases that is not so great. And so someone came up with this 5-second rule, where basically it says, in these 5 seconds, you count down from 5, and at the end of the countdown, you actually do what you're trying to do. Imagine that. It's crazy. But it's amazing because we're kind of wired to react to a countdown, right? Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fireworks or like something, we want something to happen. So our brains don't have the chance to be like, no, don't do that, because they're like, oh, 1, we gotta do it. So it can apply to anything in your life. It applied to me the other day. I was laying in bed. I really suck at getting up in the morning. I just lay in bed. And I can never get up because I'm like, well, it's so comfy here. But then I did this 5-second thing, and you just count down and you get up. And it's like, wow, I'm up, okay. The other day I had to make this phone call that I was really dreading, and I didn't want to do it. And so I'm like, okay, Caitlin, 5 seconds. And in the 5 seconds, I'm counting down, I'm dialing the number. On 1, I click dial. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm here. But I was already there, and I couldn't stop it then. I probably could have, but then it would have been awkward. And in those 5 seconds, you can really convince yourself to do anything because your brain hasn't gotten in the way yet. So you haven't had that chance to hesitate. So it's a really powerful rule. And the point of me telling you this is that overthinking can really hold you back from a lot in your life. Overthinking kills a lot of dreams, kills a lot of great ideas, because we think, oh, it's not good enough. Oh, I don't have it all thought out, and I should not say it at this meeting. It might have even happened to some of us at this conference. Like, oh, I really wanted to talk to him, but, oh well, I wasn't prepared. It wouldn't have been the right time. There would have been a better time later. There's always something that it holds us back from. And that's where the brain has really failed us, because it's hesitating. In a lot of these cases, when we have these amazing ideas, these amazing things that we want to do, but we just don't do them. So before I go on, I want to talk to you about my dream. So back when I was 12 years old, I started volunteering with a hospice in my community. And a hospice, I'm sure most of you know what that is, but basically they care for terminally ill patients with 6 months or less to live. And 85% of hospice patients are elderly, over the age of 65 typically. And I was volunteering there, and by age 15, I was kind of just doing office work when I was 12. And then by age 15, I wanted to do more for these patients. I was like, well, I'm not interacting with them as much as I could be. Furthermore, there's no one else my age interacting with them. And I saw this movie, Patch Adams, and Dr. Patch in the movie, he wanted to make his patients happy, along with treating them. big revolutionary concept at the time. And he's treating this 95-year-old patient, and she had told Dr. Patch that she'd always wanted to swim in spaghetti. And he was like, okay, we will make that happen. And so the next day, he fills this massive blow-up pool with spaghetti, and they go swimming in it. Him and this 95-year-old woman are swimming in this pool of cooked spaghetti. And that was her dream come true. And so I thought, well, maybe I can do something like this for the hospice patients in my community. Maybe I can, do something that they want to do one last time, or that they never got the chance to do, or some crazy wild thing that they want to do. And so I presented the idea to my hospice that I was volunteering for, and they were like, great, Caitlin, this is perfect, this is awesome. And I got my very first dream. I was by myself. I didn't have anyone working with me at the time. And it was for a man named Bernie, and he had ALS and loved the ocean. And he wanted to go out and sail one last time. And so we took Bernie out sailing, and the entire time he was smiling. And it really impacted his life. And so that experience really made me fall in love with this. And still at this point, I had no clue, what would become of dream catchers. I didn't even think I had a name at that point. I was just doing this on my own. So it all started with Bernie. He was my step one in this journey. And I met people like Lucy, this 100-year-old woman who had served her whole life. She had volunteered just like you all her entire life, and her final dream was to throw a luncheon for her fellow volunteers who she had served with her whole life, selfless till the very end. Or Pat had traveled her entire life, to China especially, but at the end no one really cared to hear her stories. And so I sat with her for a couple months, and we went through all of her photos, and she told me all of her stories of China, and we prepared a presentation for her nursing home friends. So when I'm talking about these different steps that I took in starting Dream Catchers, it started with the simplest thing, talking to my hospice, hey, can I get some of these dreams from patients? And then Bernie was my very first dream. He was part of my step one in starting Dream Catchers. But for Bernie, that was his grand finale. So if we're looking at our different steps along our journeys, you don't know how much your one step could impact someone's entire life. So what sometimes gets in the way of us actually doing things is the overwhelming largeness of it all. We have this dream that you just thought about at the beginning, and it seems so huge. It seems really difficult. There's a lot that needs to be done to get there. So we often just put it off. We're like, oh, I'm too busy right now to focus on that. It's too much. But if we start to think about our life and our dreams like a to-do list, it starts to become a little more attainable. So the other day I was having lunch with the head of a nonprofit in LA, and he was kind of helping me as I'm growing Dream Catchers. And I was telling him I'm a little overwhelmed with everything that I need to do to grow Dream Catchers. There's so many things to get it to where it needs to be. And he's like, Caitlin, don't think of it that way. Think of it as, what do you need to do today? What do you need to do next week? Make a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly to-do list. Break it down so it's less of this huge outcome that you're trying to achieve and more of this, oh, I can do those 2 things today that are going to contribute to my year-end goal. It becomes way more attainable when you break it down that way. For example, take cleaning the house. That seems like a big task, and I often put it off for a long time because of how big it is. But if you start to take it down step by step, to-do list. Let's empty the dishwasher. Great, done. Let's pick up my clothes off the floor. Great, done. All of a sudden, you've cleaned the whole house, and you've just taken it step by step. So when you stop looking at it as like, I need to clean the entire house, but rather, I need to empty the dishwasher now. I need to clean the floors now. It's broken down into a way more attainable concept that you can really work with, and you can move forward with that. So we have this dream, and we're making our to-do list, we're making it happen. So along the way, you're going to encounter a lot of people along your journey of making this happen. And here's another quote that I'd like to read to you. There are 2 types of people who will tell you that you cannot make a difference in this world. Those who are afraid to try, and those who are afraid you'll succeed. So both of these people are people you don't want to let get in the way of your dreams. And it's amazing to see how many people will actually be the opposite of that and want to help you spread your dream, help you get the word out. Let's say you're trying to change a small part of your community by making it better. How are you going to get people behind you? That was a huge fear of mine when I started Dreamcatchers, because I thought I was the only 15-year-old that would ever have an interest in, hanging out with older people who are dying. A lot of people looked at me and said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" All my friends were in like children's charities, and I still don't love babies and children, but I love old people. Those are my people, and those are the people I would prefer to hang out with. So I thought I was so weird and out there, which I probably am, but I didn't think anyone would be interested in doing this. But a couple weeks later, as I had started granting a couple dreams on my own, I noticed that my friends and my other classmates were asking me how to get involved. I was like, oh, shoot, I don't know. Just hang out with me. And we started a club at my high school because I had like 20 people in my high school that wanted to do this too. That was mind-blowing to me that there were that many people just at my high school, given my high school was massive, but still, that was quite a few people. And so I had these 20 people that started off with me in my very first Dreamcatchers Club. And I was like, great, this is it. This is the best. Done. Game over. Great journey with Dreamcatchers. But then I started seeing it spread to local high schools. I was like, how did you guys even hear about this? And then all of a sudden, it's spreading to different states. Other students across the country are wanting to start Dreamcatchers clubs. I'm like, what? How is this possible? I didn't think there were that many people out there like me that were interested in doing this. And so I learned something throughout my spreading of Dreamcatchers, and a lot of times, or the one summer of college, I actually went around the country talking to different schools, different hospices, trying to get people to start clubs. And that summer I learned a lot about people. And right now, I had this great graphic of 5 baseball team members walking out of the cornfields. Field of dreams. And I didn't even know until earlier that that was actually in Iowa. So that's pretty cool. I had real foresight on that. But just picture that image right now. And what I was going to say here, well, I'll still say it, is if you build it, they will come. So this is really applicable to this message, because I started talking about Dreamcatchers. I would get on the news station, get on the radio, and just talk about Dreamcatchers and my passion for it. And I had people flocking to start clubs. And it really showed me that if you speak with a passion about something, it is endless what you can get done. And it became almost easy, because I would just talk about it, and people would be like, I want to start a club, I want to start a club. And it was just amazing, the power of speaking your purpose with a passion. And so that's something hopefully you all can take away from this. When you are speaking of your dream, or whatever you want to do, wherever you want to be in a few years, speak with passion. Many people will come to you. And another thing I learned is that people are good. And a lot of times it's easy to forget this, because we see a lot of bad news on TV, on our computers, and it's easy to think that the majority of people are evil, because that's a lot of what we see. But I found that people want to help, and they will really do anything in their power to help you, and I'm sure a lot of you experience this working with your JC chapters, which is a really beautiful thing. But people are generally good, and they want to help you spread your dream. So whatever it may be, don't let that part of it get in the way of what you want to do, because it's going to be easy to find people to help you spread this, especially if you're doing something to hopefully better the world in some way. Now, as I say all of this, I want to make it clear that there's really no right way to do something, to go about making your dream come true, making your thing that we just thought about at the beginning of my speech, making that a reality. There's no right way, there's no right answer, there's no right time. And I really want to emphasize that, because it's really up to you. There's really only you. And I just got back from this conference in DC. It was on Alzheimer's. And I met this girl. She's 11 years old. And her grandma had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, just probably a year or so ago. And she was super close with her grandma. And so she was dealing with this disease because her grandma had Alzheimer's. And she realized as an 11-year-old, nobody really tells you how to handle that. Nobody ever helped her know how to deal with her grandmother, how to help her with certain things that she never thought she would have to. And so this girl, at 11, started this kid caregiver company, basically getting the message out to these other kids. This is how to help a loved one who's going through Alzheimer's. And she started this so that she could kind of help other people her age that didn't have another place to go, so that they could know how to deal with this terrible disease that affected your loved ones, or their loved ones. And so that just goes to show you that there's really no right time for anything. I mean, she's 11, and she started it, and she's doing amazing things. And she's only 11. She doesn't really have, a lot of experience in life. So next time I'm here, next year, I want to be telling the story of one of you guys that kind of took this message and took everything you've learned at this conference to heart, and really just went out there and started your to-do list. Started this, okay, to get my dream, this big outcome that is so unattainable, how can I break this down? And you started that. And in the year between this and the next all-state convention, well, not the next one, but the next one after that, the one in a year, what have you done to make that dream happen? What have you done to start to change your little part of the world, which might be someone's entire world? So I want to come back here and hopefully hear those stories. So I want to leave you with this thought. As we exit today, and throughout the night, throughout tomorrow as you're heading home, and throughout this week as you're internalizing everything you've learned here today, and yesterday, and tomorrow. But what is your step one? What does that look like for you? And it can be anything. It can be, I want to get a new job, so my step one is, okay, I'm going to pull up my resume. I'm actually going to edit it. Step one. You're already on your way. That easy. So think about that today, tomorrow, this week. Think about your step one. And let's make it happen. Thank you so much.